The massive meeting hall buzzed with alien voices as thousands of creatures from across the galaxy gathered for the weekly Galactic Council session. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from over 300 different species. Some floated in energy fields, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure light that flickered in special containers. Ambassador Sarah sat in the small section marked for human representatives. Her simple blue uniform looked plain compared to the glowing robes and crystal armor worn by other delegates. She was one of only 3 humans in the entire building, and she could feel the dismissive stares from creatures who barely considered her species worth noticing. The representative spoke first. Its crystal body rang like a bell as it communicated. The translator in Sarah's ear converted the musical tones into words she could understand. The mining dispute in the sector has been resolved. The humans will cease their illegal extraction activities immediately. Sarah stood up, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. Ambassador, with respect, those are human colonies. We have every right to mine asteroids in our own territory. The crystal being's light dimmed with what Sarah had learned was the equivalent of laughter. Human territory, your species, has existed in space for barely 50 years. The Empire has controlled that sector for over 5,000 years. A new voice joined the conversation. This one came from Queen Commander of the Swarm. Her form clicked and chittered as she spoke. Perhaps the humans need another reminder of their place in the galactic order. The collective representative, being of pure energy contained in a floating sphere, pulsed with agreement. The young species often require guidance. They lack the wisdom that comes with age. Sarah felt her face flush with anger, but she kept her voice calm. We're not asking for special treatment. We just want the same rights as every other member species. Rights must be earned, the delegate replied. Its crystalline form shifted, throwing rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Your technology is primitive. Your understanding of physics is basic. Your weapons are laughably simple. Chemical explosives and nuclear fusion. You cannot even properly manipulate quantum fields. The statement drew what sounded like agreement from dozens of other species. Sarah had heard this same speech countless times in the 3 years she had served as Earth's ambassador. Humanity was always the backward cousin, at the family gathering, tolerated but never respected. Furthermore, Queen Commander added, your species shows disturbing violent tendencies. The way you wage war against each other suggests you are not ready for advanced technologies. Sarah wanted to point out that every species in the chamber had histories of violence, but she had learned that such arguments fell on deaf ears or eloquence. In the case of the crystalline, the session continued for hours, with humanity receiving one restriction after another: no access to quantum weapon technology, no permission to establish colonies in core sectors, no trading rights with advanced civilizations. The message was always the same: know your place, primitives. As the meeting ended, Sarah gathered her few belongings and headed for the exit. She had grown used to the way other delegates avoided her, stepping aside as if primitive humanity might be contagious. Only a few species even acknowledged her existence, and those interactions were usually brief and condescending. Outside the council building, Sarah activated her communication device, and opened a secure channel to Earth. The transmission would take several hours to reach home through the quantum relay network that humanity was barely permitted to use. Director Martinez. This is Ambassador reporting from today's council session. The response came back several hours later as Sarah sat in her small quarters in the diplomatic district. Director Carlos Martinez appeared on her screen, his weathered face showing the strain of leading Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission. How bad was it this time? Sarah, same as always. They approved new restrictions on our mining operations in the sector. They are making noise about teaching us another lesson, and the technology sharing committee, our request for quantum communication upgrades again. Martinez rubbed his forehead. Any word on the colony ship that went missing near the Riel system? Nothing official, but I overheard some delegates talking about raiders hitting another human transport. They seemed to think it was amusing. On Earth, Martinez looked out the window of his office at the massive construction projects visible in Earth's orbital shipyards. Sarah, I need you to keep playing the humble diplomat for a while longer. Keep taking their insults and keep asking nicely for basic rights. How much longer, Carlos? These people treat us like we're barely evolved apes. They laugh when our colonies get attacked. They act like we should be grateful just to be allowed in the same room as them. Martinez smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Not much longer, Sarah, not much longer at all. Far from the diplomatic chambers of the Galactic Council in the asteroid belt of Earth's solar system, something very different was happening. Hidden among the floating rocks and mining stations, a massive construction project was nearing completion. Doctor floated in zero gravity as she made final adjustments to a weapon system that would have given the Galactic Council nightmares if they had known it existed. Around her, thousands of human engineers and technicians worked around the clock on Project Hurricane. Doctor, we're ready for the final tests, her assistant called out over the communication system. Looked out through the observation window at the ship that had consumed 5 years of her life. The UHSF Tempest was 5 km of human engineering and determination given physical form, where other species built elegant vessels designed for prolonged engagements. Humanity had built something entirely different. Run the test, she said to her chief engineer. It's time to show the galaxy what human determination looks like when it gets angry. The Tempest powered up for the first time its massive engines, creating gravitational distortions that bent space itself. Weapon systems that combined human innovation with physics, pushed to the absolute limit, came online. One by one. This was not just a ship. This was humanity's promise that they would never again bow to galactic arrogance. In her diplomatic quarters, Sarah went to sleep not knowing that everything was about to change. Soon the galaxy would learn that humanity's silence had not been submission, it had been preparation. The warning came too late. Captain Jennifer was reviewing supply reports in her office aboard the orbital defense station when the alarm started. Screaming red lights flashed throughout the command center as her communications officer's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, we have 3 unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're big and they're heading straight for New Geneva. Jennifer rushed to the main display Screen: New Geneva was humanity's colony. World: home to 50,000 people who had left Earth to build better lives among the stars. The planet was beautiful, covered in vast oceans and green continents that reminded settlers of home. Can you identify the ships? Jennifer asked, scanning now. Captain, those are swarm battle cruisers. Each one is twice the size of our largest vessels. Jennifer felt cold fear settle in her stomach. They were one of the three major powers in the galaxy known for their aggressive expansion and cruel treatment of species they considered inferior. Their ships were technological marvels compared to humanity's small defense fleet. Open communications to the lead vessel, Jennifer ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the terrifying face of a commander. The creature looked like a massive insect with multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Its voice came through the translator as cold and mechanical. I am Sub-Queen Ara of the glorious swarm. This system is now under Confederation enforcement action. All human vessels will surrender immediately. Jennifer kept her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. This is Captain of the New Geneva Defense Force. This system is sovereign human territory under galactic Confederation law. You have no authority here. The commander's mandibles spread in what Jennifer realized was probably laughter. Foolish primitive. Your species violated Confederation space law by defending yourselves against raiders in the sector. The Galactic Council has authorized corrective action. We were defending our own colonies from attacks. That's not a violation of any law. Inferior species do not decide what is legal. That privilege belongs to their betters. The screen went dark as the cut communications. Jennifer turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant, what do we have available for defense? 2 patrol frigates, 4 escort vessels, and the orbital defense platforms against 3 swarm battle cruisers. Shook his head. Captain, were completely outmatched. Their shields alone could probably absorb everything we can throw at them. Jennifer stared at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy ships. Each vessel was over 2 km long and packed with weapons that could level cities. Her small fleet was brave but hopelessly. All ships. This is Captain. Form defensive formation around New Geneva. Prepare for combat. The battle was over before it really began. Jennifer's frigates launched their best missiles, which simply disappeared against the energy shields. The orbital defense platforms opened fire with particle beam cannons that left no visible damage on the enemy hulls. The swarm's response was devastating. Quantum disruptor beams tore through human ships like they were made of paper. In less than 20 minutes, the entire New Geneva Defense Force was floating debris. Jennifer's ship was the last to die. As plasma bolts punched through her vessel's hull, she managed to send one final message toward Earth. This is Captain. New Geneva Defense Fleet is destroyed. Forces are beginning orbital bombardment of civilian targets. Remember us. On the planet below. The bombardment began. Plasma cannons turned entire cities into glass craters. 50,000 human colonists, including families with children who had never seen Earth, died. In the first hour of the attack, forces were methodical and efficient. They targeted population centers, infrastructure, and anything that might allow the colony to rebuild. This was not conquest, this was extermination. designed to send a message to humanity and the rest of the galaxy. News of the New Geneva massacre reached Earth 3 days later through quantum relay transmissions. Director Martinez sat in the emergency cabinet meeting, watching footage of burning cities and listening to the few survivor reports that had made it off the planet. The Galactic Council's response asked General Harrison, the head of Earth's military forces. They expressed regret for the loss of life, but supported the action as a necessary response to human aggression. Martinez replied, his voice filled with barely controlled rage. President Sarah's older sister slammed her hand on the conference table. Aggression. We defended our own people from raiders, and they call that aggression. The Council also voted to impose additional restrictions on human expansion as punishment for provoking the incident. Martinez continued, we're forbidden from establishing any new colonies for the next 50 years. The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled on everyone present. Earth's government had worked for decades to build peaceful relationships with galactic civilization. They had accepted insults, restrictions, and second-class treatment in hopes of gradual acceptance. New Geneva changed everything. General Harrison broke the silence. What about Project Hurricane? All eyes turned to Admiral Tour, who had been silent throughout the meeting. The Admiral was a veteran of Earth's last major war, man who understood both the cost of violence and the price of weakness. Tempest completed its final trials yesterday. Tor said quietly, all systems are operational. The crew is ready. President looked around the table at her advisors. These were good people who had spent their careers trying to build a better future for humanity among the stars, but the galaxy had made its position clear. Humanity would always be the inferior species to be slaughtered whenever it suited the convenience of their betters. Admiral Tour, you have authorization to activate Hurricane protocol. Show them what happens when you push humanity too far. Tour nodded and stood to leave. As he reached the door, President called out to him, make sure the galaxy understands this isn't just about New Geneva. This is about every human being who will ever among the stars. Make sure they never forget. Admiral Tour's smile was cold as winter on Mars. Madame President, after what I'm about to do, the galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. In the hidden shipyards of the asteroid belt, the UHSF Tempest began powering up its massive engines. The Hurricane-class battleship had been built for one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never again be dismissed as harmless primitives. The storm was coming, and the galaxy was about to learn why humans called their greatest weapons after natural disasters. The fleet was finishing their work when the unknown contact appeared at the edge of the New Geneva system. Queen Commander stood in the command center of her flagship, watching her forces complete their pacification operations. On the human world below, smoke still rose from the crater that had once been the colony's capital city. Her soldiers were hunting down the few remaining survivors in the forests and mountains. My queen, we detect a single vessel approaching from hyperspace, reported her tactical officer. Multiple eyes focused on the display screen. Identification. The energy signature matches human technology, but the ship is much larger than anything in their fleet records. Length appears to be approximately 5 km. The Queen Commander's mandibles clicked. With amusement, 5 km. Impossible, the humans barely have the technology to build ships longer than a few hundred meters. She paused, studying the readings. Perhaps they have constructed some kind of transport or colony ship. Orders, my queen, hail the vessel. I personally accept their surrender and explain the consequences of human aggression to the galaxy. The communication request was answered. Almost immediately, the screen showed human male in a crisp military uniform. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that made survival instincts twitch with unease. This is Admiral Tour of the United Human Systems Fleet, the human said. You are ordered to cease hostile operations against human civilians and withdraw from this system immediately. Laughter was a harsh chittering sound. Admiral, the humans have admirals now. How amusing. I am Queen Commander of the glorious swarm. Your pathetic species has been found guilty of aggression against Confederation forces. This is your punishment. I'm giving you one chance to withdraw. Peacefully, Torres replied, his voice never changing tone. Leave now or face the consequences. Consequences. Multiple eyes glittered with malicious humor. Human, your entire defense fleet was destroyed in 20 minutes. What consequences could you possibly threaten me with? You have 10 minutes to begin withdrawal procedures. After that, I will consider your ships legitimate military targets. The transmission ended before could respond. She stared at the blank screen in amazement. Did that primitive just threaten the glorious swarm? Her second in command, Sub-Inara, moved closer to the command console. My queen, perhaps we should examine this vessel more carefully. The energy readings are unusual. Waved a claw dismissively. It is one ship against 3 battle cruisers, even if it is some kind of new human design. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Target the vessel and destroy it. Make sure the wreckage is identifiable so other primitive species understand what happens when they challenge their betters. On the bridge of the UHSF Tempest, Admiral Tour closed the communication channel and turned to his senior staff. The bridge was enormous, designed to coordinate weapon systems that the galaxy had never seen before. 50,000 crew members worked throughout the ship, each one understanding that they carried the weight of humanity's future. Tactical report, Captain Torres ordered. Captain was the ship's tactical officer, a brilliant strategist who had spent years planning for this exact moment. 3 battle cruisers in standard formation. Each vessel is approximately 2 km in length, armed with quantum disruptors and plasma cannons. Their shields are running at maximum power. Weaknesses. Their shield technology is designed to absorb energy weapons and deflect conventional projectiles. However, our intelligence suggests they have never faced kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds. Torres nodded. The Tempest had been built around a simple human philosophy. If something exists, humans will find a way to throw it at their enemies fast enough to cause damage. Weapon status. All Hurricane Protocol systems are online and ready. Magnetic accelerators are charged. Gravitational lensing arrays are stable. Relativistic kill vehicles are loaded and targeted. Lieutenant Commander Singh, the ship's science officer, spoke up from his station. Admiral, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions around our ship that will definitely notice our Gravity manipulation systems, Tor. Smiled coldly. Good, let them wonder. What they're looking at, the Tempest was. Unlike any ship ever built, where other species focused on energy weapons and exotic matter manipulation, humanity had weaponized the fundamental forces of physics. The ship's main armament consisted of tungsten rods accelerated to near light speed using a combination of magnetic fields and controlled gravitational manipulation. Sir, the fleet is moving to attack. Formation, Captain reported to stood and walked to the main, outside the stars. Themselves seemed to bend around the Tempest as its gravitational systems activated. How much time until they're in optimal firing position? 4 minutes. Sir, very well. All hands, this is Admiral Tor. Today we show the galaxy that humanity bows to no one. Today we prove that underestimating human determination is a fatal mistake. Tor paused, looking at the approaching enemy. Fleet Hurricane Protocol is now active. All weapons free. Captain began the firing sequence that would change galactic history. Gravitational lensing. Arrays online. Target acquisition complete. Relativistic kill vehicles loaded and ready. The ships were closing fast, their weapons charging for the killing blow they expected to deliver. Easily, Queen Commander watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The human ship was not even trying to evade or maneuver defensively. Foolish primitives, she muttered. Fire all weapons, turn that ship into vapor. Swarm battlecruisers opened fire with everything they had. Quantum disruptors and plasma cannons lit up the space. Between the fleets, the energy barrage was enough to destroy a small moon, but when the light faded, the human ship was still there, completely undamaged. Worse, the gravitational distortions around it were growing stronger, bending space itself into impossible patterns. Impossible, whispered. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Her tactical officer's voice was filled with panic. My queen, they're shields. They're not energy shields, they're manipulating gravity itself to deflect our weapons on the Tempest. Admiral Tor watched the energy blasts curve around his ship like water flowing around a stone. Humanity had learned that the best defense was not to absorb enemy fire, but to make sure it never reached you in the first place. Return fire, Tor's ordered quietly. Captain, press the firing control. Hurricane Protocol engaged. Weapons away. Tempest's first shot was a single tungsten rod, accelerated to 99.7% light speed. The projectile crossed the distance between ships in less than a second. Queen Commander had just enough time to see something impossible on her sensors before her flagship simply ceased to exist. The relativistic kill vehicle carried the kinetic energy of a small star. When it struck the battle cruiser, the ship didn't explode or break apart. It was converted instantly into energy that briefly the system's sun. In the sudden silence that followed, Admiral Tor spoke into his communication system. This is Admiral Tor's. That was a demonstration. You have 2 minutes to surrender or I will demonstrate again. Sub-Queen Ara stared at the empty space where her Queen Commander's flagship had been moments before. Her multiple eyes could not process what had just happened. A ship carrying 5,000 warriors had simply vanished in a flash of light, brighter than a star. My Queen Commander. Ship, it's gone, her tactical officer whispered. Ara's mandibles clicked. frantically as she tried to understand. What kind of weapon could completely destroy a swarm battle cruiser in a single hit? They had fought wars across the galaxy for centuries. They had seen every type of weapon known to galactic civilization. Nothing should have been able to penetrate their quantum shields. An ablative armor so completely scan the wreckage, she ordered. My queen. There is no wreckage, no debris field, no energy residue. The ship and everything on it has been completely converted to energy. The communication system crackled to life again. The human admiral's face appeared on the screen, his expression unchanged despite having just committed what Ara realized was an act of war that would echo across the galaxy. You have 90 seconds remaining, Admiral Tor said calmly. Ara felt something she had never experienced before in her life as a swarm warrior. Genuine fear, but she was still a queen of the bred for war and trained to fight until death. Human, you have destroyed a vessel of the glorious swarm. This is an act of war against the Confederation itself. You will pay for this crime with the complete destruction of your pathetic species. Tors nodded slightly. I understand your position, Captain. Target the second ship on the Tempest's bridge. Captain was already tracking the remaining vessels. Target locked. Admiral, second relativistic kill vehicle ready. Fire. Another tungsten rod shot from the Tempest magnetic accelerators, racing toward the second swarm battle cruiser at light speed. But sub-Queen Ara had seen what happened to her queen. Commander, she was already shouting orders to her helmsman. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Now the ship began to enter hyperspace just as the human projectile reached its position. For a moment it looked like the vessel might escape. Then the Tempest's secondary weapons activated. Admiral Tor watched as gravitational field generators created a localized distortion in spacetime around the fleeing enemy ship. Gravity wells active. No one leaves until we're finished here. The swarm battle cruiser was caught halfway into hyperspace when the gravitational fields grabbed it. The ship stretched and twisted as different parts of it were pulled in different directions by competing forces. Metal screamed and energy conduits exploded as the vessel was literally torn apart at the molecular level. The third commander, Queen Subura, had watched both of her sister ships die in ways that violated everything she thought she knew about physics. Her ship was already turning to flee when Admiral Tors opened communications again. Queen Subura Tors said, somehow knowing her name and rank, you have 30 seconds to surrender or you will share the fate of your sisters. Aura's voice shook as she responded. Human, what are you? What kind of weapons are those? We are the species you dismissed as primitive. These are the weapons we build when we get tired of being pushed around. Tors paused. 15 seconds. Are looked around her bridge at her crew. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of star systems for the glory of the swarm, but they were also intelligent enough to recognize when they faced something beyond their ability to fight. I surrender, she whispered. Excellent. You will withdraw immediately from this system and return to swarm space. You will also transmit a complete recording of this engagement to your superiors. Tors leaned forward slightly. But first you will help us deliver a message to the galaxy. What message? Admiral Tors gestured to Captain, who activated the Tempest's most powerful weapons system. The message that humanity does not forgive and humanity does not forget. On the second moon of New Geneva, they had established a prison camp for human survivors they had captured during the bombardment. 3,000 civilians, including women and children, were being held in crude cages, while the swarm decided how to dispose of them. The Tempest sensors locked onto the moon with perfect precision. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy. For array charging, Captain, announced Lieutenant Commander Singh, monitored the weapon's power levels from his science station. Admiral, are you certain about this? The energy release will be visible from neighboring star systems. Tor nodded grimly. That's the point, Commander. The galaxy needs to understand what happens when you murder human civilians. The array was humanity's ultimate expression of controlled destruction. It didn't just destroy targets, it removed them from existence by converting matter directly into energy using controlled gravitational collapse. The weapon required the power output of a small star, which the Tempest's revolutionary fusion reactors could provide. Array charged and ready, Captain reported. Target the moon's core full power. Queen Subra watched in horror as the human ship's weapons activated. Energy readings on her sensors went completely off scale. The space around the human vessel began to glow as gravitation forces built to levels that should have been impossible. The beam that lanced out from the Tempest was invisible, but its effects were immediately apparent. The moon didn't explode in the conventional sense. Instead, it began to collapse in on itself as its matter was converted to pure energy. The process took exactly 17 seconds. When it was over, New Geneva's second moon was gone. In its place was a brief new star that the system sun. Before fading into ordinary space, energy release was so intense that ships in neighboring star systems detected it through their hyperspace sensors. Aura found her voice after several minutes of stunned silence. You destroyed an entire moon. The prisoners your own people were on that moon. Admiral Tor's expression never changed. They killed them when they established the camp. We simply ensured that their murders were avenged. He paused. Now you understand what humanity is capable of when we decide to stop playing by galactic rules. This is insanity. The Confederation will never tolerate such weapons. The Confederation will do exactly what they have always done, whatever serves their interests best. And now those interests include making sure humanity is never again dismissed as primitive. To stood up on his bridge. Queen Sub, you will broadcast the following message on all galactic frequencies. The message that went out to every corner of known space was simple and direct. This is Admiral Tor of the United Human Systems Fleet. The swarm attacked and destroyed a human colony, murdering 50,000 civilians. Their forces have been eliminated. Any further attacks on human worlds or citizens will result in the complete destruction of the attacking forces and their command structure. Humanity seeks peace, but we will no longer tolerate being treated as inferior. The galaxy is welcome to test this resolve. As the last ship limped away toward swarm space, Admiral Tor looked out at the space where a moon had once existed. In 17 minutes, humanity had announced its arrival as a major galactic power in the most definitive way possible. The storm had passed, but its effects would reshape the galaxy forever. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 18 hours after the last transmission from New Geneva reached the core worlds. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in stunned silence as they watched the footage that Queen Subura had transmitted before fleeing to Swarm space. The recording showed impossible things: a human ship that manipulated gravity like other species manipulated light, weapons that converted matter directly to energy, the complete destruction of a celestial body in less than 20 seconds. Most shocking of all, it showed the total annihilation of 3 battle cruisers by a single human vessel. The representative's crystalline form flickered with confused patterns of light. Its normally musical voice was harsh and discordant. This cannot be authentic. Human technology is primitive. They barely understand quantum mechanics. The collective's energy being pulsed frantically in its containment sphere. We have analyzed the footage extensively. It is genuine. The energy signatures are consistent with matter-antimatter annihilation on a massive scale. Queen Empress of the Swarm stood at her delegation's podium, her massive form trembling with rage and something else the galaxy had never seen from the Swarm before: fear. The humans have committed an act of war against the Confederation, she declared. They destroyed 3 ships carrying 15,000 Swarm warriors. They must be punished. The council chamber erupted in dozens of different alien voices. Some species called for immediate military action against humanity. Others demanded to know how the humans had developed such devastating weapons without galactic knowledge. A few, the smaller and weaker species that had suffered under Confederation authority, remained conspicuously quiet. The delegate managed to restore order by amplifying its crystalline voice to painful levels. The question before this council is simple: how do we respond to this unprovoked human aggression? That was when Ambassador Sarah stood up in the human section. She had watched the footage like everyone else, and despite the terrible cost in lives, she felt something she had not experienced in 3 years of diplomatic service: pride. Honored delegates, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I must correct a statement made by the representative. The human action was not unprovoked. Queen Empress mandibles clicked angrily. The humans violated Confederation law by defending themselves against legitimate enforcement actions. Sarah smiled coldly. Your Majesty, the Swarm attacked and destroyed a peaceful human colony, murdering 50,000 civilians, including children. Under any interpretation of galactic law, this was genocide, not enforcement. Inferior species do not have the right to. The Queen Empress began. Your Majesty, Sarah interrupted, I would be very careful about referring to my species as inferior, as the footage clearly demonstrates. Human weapons technology has advanced considerably since our last diplomatic contact. The chamber fell silent at the implied threat. Sarah looked around at the hundreds of alien faces staring at her, with expressions ranging from fear to anger to something that might have been respect. The United Human Systems Fleet has authorized me to make the following statement, Sarah continued. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all galactic species. We have no desire to conquer territory or impose our will on others. However, we will no longer tolerate attacks on human worlds or restrictions on human expansion based solely on perceived technological Inferiority. The collective representative pulsed. Rapidly, Ambassador, your species has demonstrated weapons that threaten the stability of galactic civilization. The Confederation cannot allow such technology to proliferate. Sarah's smile widened. With respect, honored representative, you seem to be under the impression that you have a choice in the matter. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every delegate in the chamber was doing the same calculation. If one human ship could destroy 3 battle cruisers and eliminate a moon, how many more ships did humanity have? How long would it take them to build a fleet that could threaten entire star systems? The delegates' crystalline form had dimmed to an almost invisible shimmer. What does humanity want? Full membership in the Galactic Confederation with all attendant rights and privileges, immediate removal of all restrictions on human territorial expansion, reparations for the new Geneva massacre to be paid by the swarm. Sarah paused in a formal apology from this council for 3 years of treating my species as second-class citizens. Queen Empress raised herself to her full, intimidating height. The glorious swarm will never bow to primitives. We have fleets that could darken 1,000 skis. We have conquered species across the galaxy. Sarah activated her personal communication device and opened channel to Earth. Director Martinez, the Queen Empress would like to discuss fleet strengths with Admiral Tour. The response came back immediately, broadcast on open channels so every delegate could hear it. Admiral Tours appeared on the main council display, speaking from the bridge of the Tempest. Your Majesty, I understand you have questions about human fleet capabilities. I'm happy to provide a demonstration. We have 17 Hurricane-class battleships currently operational, with 30 more under construction. Each one carries weapons capable of sterilizing a planet or collapsing a star. Would you like me to visit Swarm Space to show you how they work? The Queen Empress's compound eyes went wide with terror. 17 ships like the one that had destroyed her battle cruisers, 30 more being built. Swarm's entire military doctrine was built around overwhelming enemies with numbers and individual ship superiority. Neither advantage would matter against weapons that could destroy moons. The Swarm, we did not realize, she stammered. Your Majesty, Admiral Tours continued pleasantly, I want to make something very clear to you and every other delegate listening. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to conquer other species or impose human culture on alien worlds. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Tours paused and his expression hardened. But if any species, anywhere at any time, attacks human civilians or threatens human worlds, we will respond with overwhelming force. We will not negotiate. We will not show mercy. We will simply remove the threat. The council chamber was absolutely silent. Even the usual background hum of translation devices seemed muted. The choice is yours, Tours concluded. Treat humanity as equals and partners, or learn why our ancestors named their greatest weapons after natural disasters. The vote was unanimous. Every restriction on human expansion was lifted. Full Confederation membership was granted immediately. The Swarm agreed to pay massive reparations for New Geneva. Even the formal apology was delivered, though it was delivered through gritted teeth and clicking mandibles. The real change went deeper then. Official policy, in a single 17-minute engagement, humanity had shifted from being the galaxy's ignored primitives to being its most feared military power. Trade requests flooded in from species that had previously refused to acknowledge human existence. Defense pacts were offered by worlds that wanted human protection. Research partnerships were proposed by civilizations that suddenly wanted to understand how humans had weaponized physics itself. Ambassador Sarah returned to Earth a hero. Director Martinez met her at the spaceport with a smile that had been years in the making. How does it feel to be respected? He asked. Sarah looked up at the stars visible through the spaceport dome. Somewhere out there, the Tempest and her sister ships patrolled human space, ensuring that no species would ever again mistake human patience for weakness. It feels like we finally came home, she said. In the depths of space, Admiral Tor stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Exactly 17 minutes, humanity would never again bow to those who thought might made right. The hurricane had passed, but its memory would ensure clear skies for human civilization for generations to come.